If you're in the process of purchasing a home or are simply interested in understanding the details around financing, you're in the right place. Today, we're diving into the topic of Fannie Mae financing concessions and breaking down what fees and costs are included when the seller assists with closing cost. I'll be walking you through the key points about what these concessions cover and how they can impact you as a buyer or seller. Plus, we'll clarify which costs fall into this category so you know exactly what to expect when it comes time to close. At the end of this video, if you still have questions or want to explore this topic further, don't hesitate to book a time with my team for a one-on-one chat. Just click the link in the description below. Let's get started. When you hear the term financing concession, what exactly does that mean? So simply put, financing concessions refer to the cost that would usually be the buyer's responsibility, but instead covered by the seller. So this arrangement is common in real estate transactions, especially when the buyer is looking for ways to reduce their upfront cost at closing. So sellers paying these fees can be a great benefit to buyers, but there are some limits to how much the seller can contribute depending on the size of the down payment and the loan terms. So understanding what counts as a concession and what doesn't is crucial in staying compliant with Fannie Mae guidelines. For example, local customs often dictate that certain fees, like attorney fees or transfer taxes, are traditionally paid by the seller, but these don't count as financing concessions. They're just part of a normal transaction. So what kind of fees are considered a financing concession? Let's break it down. There are several types of fees that the seller can pay on behalf of the buyer, which Fannie Mae considers as a financing concession. These typically cover various parts of the mortgage process, such as origination fees. These are the costs associated with the creation of the loan. They can include processing, underwriting, application fees, etc. Discount points. So a buyer may choose to pay discount points up front to lower their mortgage interest rate. If the seller covers this cost, it counts as a financing concession. Commitment fees. These are fees the lender charges to lock in a specific interest rate for the loan term. Again, if the seller pays for this, it's considered a financing concession. Appraisal costs. Normally, the buyer is responsible for the cost of the appraisal, but if the seller covers this fee, it falls under financing concessions. Other typical costs that can be paid by the seller as concessions include survey charges, title insurance premiums, real estate tax service fees, etc., etc. So this flexibility can be incredibly helpful for buyers, especially those who may need assistance covering upfront cost. But sellers and buyers should be aware of the maximum limits allowed by Fannie Mae. Now let's talk about prepaid items. These are another area where a seller might assist a buyer, and they're also considered part of a financing concession. These items include costs that extend beyond the closing, like interest charges, but not limited to no more than 30 days of interest. So real estate taxes for periods after the settlement date, hazard insurance premiums limited to 14 months. Prepaid items also cover homeowners association dues, transfer fees, mortgage insurance premiums, even escrow money for the renewal of borrower-purchased mortgage insurance. There's a lot that goes into this. These prepaid costs are typically not a huge part of the closing, but they can still add up. So having them included in a financing concession could significantly reduce what a buyer needs to bring to the table. Remember, for all of this to be possible, the seller has to be willing and able to contribute. So before you start negotiating with the seller to cover as much as your closing cost as possible, it's important to understand the limits set by Fannie Mae. These limits depend primarily on the loan to value ratio, LTV. That's the percentage of the home's value that is being financed by the loan. So here's a breakdown to how much the seller can contribute. For loans with an LTV greater than 90%, the sellers can contribute up to 3% of the home's sales price towards financing concessions. For LTVs between 75 and 90%, the limit increases to 6%. If the buyer's LTV is less than 75%, the seller can contribute up to 9% of the purchase price. So it's important to stay within these guidelines. If you go over these limits, the excess amount will be considered a sales concession rather than a financing concession, which can affect the home's appraised value and ultimately the loan itself. So if you're ever unsure about these limits, don't hesitate to reach out to our team. We're here to guide you through the process and ensure everything aligns with Fannie Mae guidelines. One more point. If you're buying an investment property, you're going to be limited to 2% of the sales price for a financing concession, regardless of the down payment used. So you might be wondering, why do these concessions matter? The main reason is they can significantly impact both the buyer and seller in a transaction. For buyers, having the seller cover some of the closing costs can be a lifesaver, especially when funds are tight. These concessions reduce the immediate out-of-pocket expenses, which can make buying a home more affordable upfront. And this is especially helpful for first-time home buyers or those who are purchasing a property with a smaller down payment. For sellers, offering to pay some of these costs can make their property more attractive to potential buyers. In competitive markets where buyers may be stretching their budgets to afford a home, a financing concession could be the extra incentive they need to close the deal. But remember, both parties need to be mindful of the rules to ensure that the transaction stays within Fannie Mae guidelines and doesn't affect the loan's approval. That brings us to the end of today's video. I hope this helped clarify what Fannie Mae financing concessions are and how they can benefit both buyers and sellers. Understanding the limits and which costs are included can save you from surprises during the closing process. If you're in the process of buying or selling and have any questions about financing concessions or want to ensure you're staying within Fannie Mae's limits, book a time with my team today. We'll walk you through all of the questions, answer them all, and help you make informed decisions. Just click the link in the description below to schedule a chat with us. We'd love to help you navigate this exciting part of the home buying process. If you haven't already, hit like, subscribe, and share with a friend. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to speaking with you soon.